with this whole climate of what is happening right now, with the whole lockdown, everything associated with that, a lot of people are left wondering, they're frustrated with what's going on, but they don't take action because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they take action, they have the courage of their convictions, then they're going to have problems. They're going to be in trouble. This is the ignorance of the common people, that they are told by the media and they assume that it's law. So they can't go against what is law. They can't go against what everybody else is supposed to be doing, what everyone else tells them to be doing. And so they'll complain about it on social media, but they won't actually take action and have the courage of their convictions because they're afraid. They're afraid of the repercussions. They're afraid of what people will think. They're afraid of getting fired. They're afraid that they'll lose their job, or that they'll lose their family, or they'll lose their friends, or whatever the repercussions could be, because they're afraid of what's on the other side of that. If I step into the courage of my convictions, having the faith to leave behind the comfort of the world that I am accustomed to and move into the unknown, will there be something for me to step on the other side? And the answer is always yes. But most people are afraid to take the leap. Most people. And you will find that if you have the courage of your convictions and you take the leap and you have that courage to leave behind what you are familiar with and take that leap, you will find that there is always ground beneath your feet. You're not going to fall. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so whenever you make a decision to step into the courage of your convictions, you are supported. There's always going to be something there to support you. And you can't look for that support before you leap, because you won't find it, because you're in fear. You're only going to find it when you take the courage, when you take that step, and you decide to cut off that doesn't serve you anymore. That's when the new thing presents itself. And so when you're talking about things like not wearing a mask, for example, I've been going out to stores from day one without a mask. I've never worn one. I never will. At first, it was very difficult. I was met with challenges. The very first day, I was sat in the hot sun for 3 hours while they worked on my car. Those of you who watch my channel remember this happening to me, and it was upsetting. It was traumatic. I was really offended. I was really upset. I was horrified by how these people treated me. I was horrified by how they reacted, but it was necessary for me to see this. I needed to see that. I needed to experience that. But it was also a test. It was a test to see, was I going to cave? Was I going to comply? Was I going to say, oh, I'm not putting up with this treatment. I'm just going to wear the mask. I'm not going to deal with this kind of confrontation. I'm just going to wear the mask. Nope, I didn't. Instead, I wrote them emails telling them, you shouldn't treat people this way. And I refused to go back there. And I refused to comply. I'm not wearing a mask. I never will wear a mask. Good morning, Ixie. And so, since then, I've been to several stores, and every time I go there, it's like a new experience for me. It's pushing boundaries for me, but it makes me stronger every time I go. The first time I went to the grocery store, and there was a kid out front who's like, sort of, the door monitor. And I walked in, and he says, do you have a mask? I said, no, I'm exempt. And he says, well, the people who are exempt are supposed to wear this face shield. I said, well, I can't wear that either. And he was like, he didn't know what to say. So he let me in. And so it was a personal victory for me. That first barrier that I crossed, going shopping without a mask and stating my case and saying I'm exempt and standing in my convictions. And so I walked in and I went about my business and bought my groceries. But there was one woman who muttered under her breath, "What, no mask?" And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to ignore that. While I was in the store, though, the first song that played on the radio was Shania Twain. So You Think You're Something Else were the lyrics. And I said, yep. It was quite funny to hear basically the universe responding to my actions. And then it followed up with Eye in the Sky, which I thought was really funny. Depending on what frequency you're on, some people will see that as a negative thing. If you're on a lower vibration and if you're in a fear vibration and the universe responds to you this way, you might get scared and get creeped out. But if you're on a higher frequency, you see it as a synchronicity and you see it as wonderful and support. Because this is just how the universe functions. This is just how this world, whatever realm we're in, it's how it functions. And so it responds to you. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice it everywhere you go. That was my first experience. And then when I went to the grocery store, the Loblaws, again, I walked in and I said I was exempt and they let me in. And so I walked around the produce aisle. I had been in there for maybe like 2 minutes. And this gentleman came up to me and said, "Good to see, no mask," or something like that. But the way that he said it kind of put me on the defensive, considering the previous experience that I had. And I thought, well, I was on the defensive already because I was expecting people to attack me. And so my immediate response was, oh, I'm exempt. And going to the store, like the whole ride up to getting to the store, I was riddled with anxiety. I was running through my head all of the possible scenarios of what could happen when I get there and what they could say to me and how I was going to respond, so I was prepared to deal with it. But I was riddled with anxiety over the conflict, over the potential conflict. But I kept telling myself, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. So it was a very stressful experience, and most people would just give up. They wouldn't go through that. They don't want to go through the anxiety. They don't want to confront that fear. But this gentleman came up to me and he's like, no, I'm supportive. I wish I had the courage to not wear the mask. So I don't have that courage. So whenever I see someone who doesn't wear one, I go and make sure that I support them. And I said, wow, thank you, appreciate that. Because, I'm full of anxiety about it, but I have to do it. And so we stood there and had about 20-minute conversation about it, and it was wonderful. And he was awake to a lot of the deception, and we talked about that, and I just felt elated. I felt supported. I felt cheered on. I felt the universe has my back, because here I was scared to death about getting into a fight. None of that happened. Not only did that not happen, but I was supported. And I was applauded. And so it made me want to go back there. And so another time I went to another store, ran into this woman who also praised me and supported me, and we had a conversation. And again, she was the same way, and she said, she doesn't have the courage to go out without a mask, and her husband does. He went to Canadian Tire, which is apparently notorious for treating people badly who can't wear masks, and he went there and they threatened to call the police, and he says, go ahead, call them. Because he knows the truth. He knows that they can't do anything because it's not a law. Now I go to the store, I don't have that anxiety because I know it is going to be fine. Recently I went to a couple of pharmacies. What I had heard was that the drugstores were particularly restrictive. And I had even spoken to someone who worked at the drugstore and told me flat out I wasn't going to be allowed in without a mask. And I was like, well, damn it. Just going to have to deal with it. They're going to have to deal with it, not me. They are. I made it their problem, not mine. And then that way it takes the fear out of it, and it takes the takes my power back. So I went to the drugstore and I just marched right in, and nobody even looked at me, and I felt super empowered. Another time I needed to go to another pharmacy, I was also told that particular pharmacy was very strict with the mask policy, and I had to go there to pick up a parcel. And I'm like, well, again, it's their problem. I have to get this parcel, so if anything happens, they got to figure out a solution on how to get it to me, so I can't lose. So I walk in the store, march straight to the counter to get my parcel. Nobody said anything, nobody looked at me. It was almost as if I was invisible. And that's kind of how it's been. It's been almost as if I'm invisible, and people either don't notice, don't say anything, or if I do say I'm exempt, they're like, okay, no big deal. They leave me alone. And so anybody out there who has been wanting to not wear the mask, but has been fearful about any repercussions or don't have the courage of their convictions, I'm telling you, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And nobody says anything. And the more that you stand your ground, the more that you know your rights, and you put the problem onto them instead of taking the problem onto you, you will realize that there's nothing to fear, and you can go out there and you can do it. You need to have that experience to get through that fear barrier. And so if you're looking for an opportunity to do this, and you think, well, I wish I had the courage to not wear the mask, try one. Go to a place where you feel that you can take it on. You can go in there and you don't have any attachments to it. Just walk in. And then if somebody says something, you just say I'm exempt, or whatever you need to say. But you don't go in there with the idea that you're going to take on the world, or you're going to have a war, you're going to fight people, or you're going to challenge them or get angry with them. You got to go in there with a peaceful mindset, and that the people at the front door, they're just doing their job, so be courteous to them and don't attack them. I mean, so there was one time where I go to this grocery store that I found out was actually non-mask wearing friendly. So if you go into the store, they will actually tell you that over the intercom, they make intermittent announcements saying that, we should be wearing a mask, and here's how to wear it, and socially distance, and then they will say, please be mindful that there are exemptions, and be courteous to the people who have exemptions. So any store that says that, I support, so I've been shopping there instead. As opposed to, well, this is another story I wanted to mention. The Loblaws that I used to go to suddenly posted a sign outside saying that masks were mandatory, and anyone seen not wearing a mask should be reported to the authorities. And I had taken my dad there to go grocery shopping the day that they stuck that sign out front. And I was like, all right, well, what's the worst that can happen? They tell me not to come in. And so anyway, we just walked right in, both of us. My dad didn't have his mask that day. He said he'll just put his scarf up, but his scarf just kept falling down. Yeah, so we just walked right in, and the guy at the door just happened to not be looking, so I just kept walking. And while we were in the store, I wasn't wearing my mask, and my dad kept looking over at me and grinning as his scarf fell off his mouth. And it was the cutest thing. And so I went through the entire store, and nobody bat an eyelid, nobody said anything, nobody called the authorities. But after that, it was such a bad taste in my mouth, I didn't want to go back there. And of course I wrote them an email, and nobody responded. Anyway, the other experience that I wanted to touch on, and this is the grocery store that was supportive of people who could not wear masks, who had exemptions. This guy out front all of a sudden started asking health questions and said, do you have any symptoms? And it took me by surprise the first time he said it because I was not expecting it. And so I just said no and then walked in, and I was like really agitated by the fact that he was asking this. And I was like, this is wrong, this is wrong. And so the next time I went prepared. I was like, I'm not letting him get away with this. But I knew at the same time, like, I can't get angry at him. It's not his fault. He's just doing what he's told. And he's just, a young kid. He was, probably late teens, early 20s, first job. Didn't really give a shit. So anyway, I show up the next time. And he asked the same question. Do you have any symptoms? I was prepared this time. And so I went up to him and I said, listen, you don't have the right to ask that question. And he's like, well, it's COVID related. I said, it doesn't matter. You don't have the right to ask that question. It's a private health question. He didn't really care. It was almost as if he was amused by the situation. And so I just said, well, I refuse to answer. And I turned around and walked in. I'd expected somebody to come after me. Nothing happened. Nobody came after me. Nothing happened at all. And so the next time I went to that grocery store, they weren't asking that question anymore. And so I don't know if that conversation I had with him had something to do with it, but I made sure that I was firm but not angry and not taking it out on him because it wasn't his fault. But I needed to tell him that he didn't have the right to ask that question. It's none of his business. I think more of us need to do this. This whole situation that we are in is about the leavening. It's about putting pressure on you and putting pressure on you so that you boil, you fervor, you brew, you come to a boil, you burst, you know where to draw the line. Where is your line? My line was early. Some people will tolerate this bullshit, and the more you tolerate it, the more you will boil. The harder it will get for you. And there will come a breaking point where you just can't tolerate it anymore and you will blow up. The earlier you deal with it, the easier it will be for you. If you go against who you are, what you stand for, what you know to be right, the longer you go against that, the more it will eat you. It will destroy you. Same with everything in life. The whole point of everything in life is that it will push you to your limits. And how far are you going to let it push you? Where are you going to draw the line? Like any issue, anything that you need to heal in your life, if there's a problem that's recurring in your life, it's going to keep recurring and it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until you see it. Because most people ignore their problems. They stick their head in the sand, they don't pay attention, and then eventually it blows up. And the longer you leave your head in the sand, the bigger the blow up. There's no avoiding it. Everybody has to deal with this with everything. Here, this situation that we're in right now, they're presenting you with opportunities to step into your conviction and step into your power, and most people won't ever do that. Some people are so far removed from how they feel about certain things. They don't have an opinion on anything. They don't have a stand on anything. They just go with the flow, or they do what other people tell them. They don't know how they feel. They haven't asked themselves what they think. They're so busy going against something that they don't like, or they're busy complaining about things that bother them, but they don't bother to think what they do want. It's much easier to recognize something they don't like than it is to pinpoint what it is they want. And so this is why a lot of people will just complain, because I'm very good at law of attraction and understanding law of attraction. A lot of times people come to me for advice on how to resolve issues. Most of the job that I have is just to turn them around and say, okay, you've identified what you don't want. Now what do you really want? They'll usually present it in the form of what they don't want. I said, no, that's what you don't want. What do you want? You say, okay, so you don't like the fact that you have to go in at certain hours. You don't like the fact that you have to sell stuff because you're not good at sales. What do you like about your job? You would like your job better if you could have flexible hours. So why is it you don't like being at your job between these hours? Well, because most of the time I have nothing to do. So if you were busy, you wouldn't mind being there between those hours. Well, no, I wouldn't mind if I was busy. So it's only because you're not busy. So it isn't the fact that you're there for those hours, it's because you're not busy during those hours. So you want a job that keeps you busy. Yeah. What don't you like about sales? Well, I don't like lying about the product. I don't like the product. Oh, so it's not sales you don't like, it's the fact that you don't believe in the product that you're selling. So if you had a job where you were selling something that you did believe in, you could sell it. Well, of course. Okay, so you want a job where you're busy and you're selling a product that you believe in. All right, so what if you turned around your perception on the product that you're selling so that you could believe in it, and you were so excited about selling it that you were busy all the time? Well, then I would like my job. So it isn't their job that they hate, it's how they go about it. And so a lot of times people look at the symptoms and see that as a problem. I mean, that's how we approach everything in this world, in this life, is symptoms are the problem, but it's not. Symptoms are the symptoms of the problem. Your goal as a truther or truth seeker or truth finder is that you're trying to find the answers to why you're here, which is why we're all on this journey. You want to find the answers as to why you're here. You want to find the way out, because 9 times out of 10 you look at this situation that we're in and you're like, well, I don't really like it here. This has to be some sort of prison or trap or hell or purgatory or what have you, and I don't want to come back. But once you get on the other side of it, which most people can't get to, most people can't get beyond their fear. They like the fear, they cling to the fear, they need the fear. The fear keeps them safe, ironically. The fear keeps them in their little protected cubbyhole and allows them to project everything and point the blame at everything else and not take responsibility for themselves and their own life. And that is their biggest fear. Their biggest fear is realizing that they are responsible for their own life. You know, it is a hard journey to get there. It really is. But the sooner you do, the easier life gets. We all go kicking and screaming. We all do not want to believe it. We all think we're at the mercy of our circumstances. We're at the mercy of our emotions and our feelings and other people's events and other people's actions. We can't help what we do. We can't help what we say. Can't help what we think. We can't help our situation. And we are totally helpless and at the mercy of circumstances. And what a horrible way to live. And yet at the same time, we fight for it. We fight to defend it. We fight to say, I have the right to be a victim. I have the right to point the finger at everybody else and blame everybody else. But what good does it do you? I mean, really, that's the only part of being in the dark, is that you're denying your own power, and that's what you're lying to yourself about. And the longer that you fight and defend your right to be a victim and your right to stay in that cubbyhole, the harder it's going to be for you, because the universe wants you to get out of that cubbyhole and step into your power. And that's why, you know, the more that the universe tries to encourage you to get out, the more you fight to stay in, the harder it gets. You're in this situation with this pressure cooker we're in, and they're presenting you with opportunities to step out, to have the courage of your convictions. And more people are sort of waking up to the realization that something's not right here. Something is off. Something needs to be done. We need to protest. We need an uprising. We need to change and take back our power and take back our rights. But what they don't realize is that those are not your rights. Those are limitations. And they don't realize this because they don't see anything beyond that. They don't see anything beyond what they've been given. And The whole point is to see what's been beyond what's been given, because that requires you thinking for yourself. That requires you to know who you are and know what is right and know what you are entitled to and know your power. Once you realize that you have the power to create your reality, create your experience, then you're not susceptible to the mess out there, to the show out there. They can do whatever they want to do, and you can sit back and watch and be amused by it, which is what the elites do. That's why they mock us, because we're sitting here bickering about stuff that doesn't matter, stuff that's fake. And this is how I know that they are putting the truth out there not because they have to by some code. They're putting it out there to help us, and we're stupid enough to not see it. Stupid enough to not hear it. We're the ones who lied to ourselves. We're the ones preventing ourselves from seeing the truth and from getting out of our own prison that we created for ourselves out of ignorance and stupidity and fear. We created the fear. So many people, okay, now I'm going to move into another topic. I don't know, maybe I'll split this into 2 talks because it's getting quite long, but so many people are afraid to step into the courage of their convictions. They're afraid to step out of the duality. They don't recognize the duality. They don't recognize that they can get out of the duality. They're so caught up in the back and forth, in the fight, in the argument, in the drama, that they don't see that they can get out of it. I'm trying to help you get out of it. And when I tell people who are caught up in the drama, caught up in the fear, pointing the finger at the evil elites and pointing the finger at somebody else and saying it's their fault, they're not looking at themselves.